What's up, everybody? Back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2010 NBA draft class. If you probably know, but if you didn't, a few days ago, there's a thing that came out that basically was confirmed as true, saying that Paul George and Gordon Hayward are the only two players still on an NBA roster from the 2010 NBA draft, which is only about 12, 13 seasons ago. Only two players are left in that class. And looking back in that class, we're going to talk about it all today because there's a lot of things I want to talk about with that class. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. Really appreciate it. If you do the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn notifications, all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It helps out a lot. Look at the analytics, a little bit less than 1% of you that actually watch the videos are subscribed. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate it a whole lot. And I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So the 2010 NBA draft now is about 13 years old. And looking back in this class, it looked pretty good. It looked like a pretty good class. And now, 13 years later, there are only two players from that class still left playing on an NBA team. And those two players are Paul George and Gordon Hayward. With Paul George, looking at it now, probably being the best player from that 2010 NBA draft class. I mean, you look at his accolades: the 8-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, Most Improved Player, 4-time All-Defensive Player. And just had a phenomenal career so far. One of the best players in the league, one of the best wings, two-way guys in the league. He was the number 10 overall pick in this draft by the Indiana Pacers out of Fresno State. So far, he leads the class in total games, minutes played, and points, while also averaging the most points per game in this class, averaging 20 for his career. And the other player in this class still left is Gordon Hayward, who's still on the Charlotte Hornets. He's a one-time All-Star as well. He was the 9th pick in this draft out of Butler, and he's had a pretty solid career as well. In Utah, he was the face of the franchise for a little while, was an All-Star there. Then he went to the Boston Celtics, had that horrible injury, and just hasn't been the same player since then, but he's still been very solid, and he's still getting paid like a very good amount. And it's also crazy when looking back on it because these two guys still left have suffered probably the worst injuries from these classes. Both these guys have broken their legs before, but have come back and are still playing at a pretty solid level as well. So that's just big credit to both of those guys. But the real thing I want to talk about this class is that there should be more than two players playing when you look back at this class. And there are two in specific players that should still be on NBA rosters right now that are not. And it's very sad. It's a very sad story for both of these guys. And two of those guys are both top 5 picks. And those two are John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. The duo was drafted out of Kentucky together, both in the top 5. And both their careers have honestly kind of went in a very similar way, which is very insane to think about. John Wall was the number 1 overall pick in this draft in 2010 out of Kentucky. And he looked like he was going to be one of the best young stars in the league. His first few years are pretty good. He made the all-rookie team this year. And then he really popped off in 2014 where he played all 82 games and made his first NBA All-Star appearance, averaging 19, 4, and 8 assists per game with the steal, playing all 82 games and leading the Wizards to the second round of the playoffs where they eventually lost to the Indiana Pacers and Paul George in 6 games. He then made the All-Star team for the next 4 years in a row after that. In 2015, he led the Hawks to the second round of the playoffs again, while he averaged 17 points and 10 assists per game. In 2016, the Wizards ultimately missed the playoffs at 41-41. Wall played in 77 games and averaged just under 20 points with 10 assists and almost 2 steals per game. Then in 2017, they went to the second round and lost again to the Boston Celtics in 7 games, as he probably had his best season ever, averaging 23 points, 10.7 assists, and 2 steals per game, while shooting 45% from the field. And after that season, Wall was still only 26 years old and was looking like he was going to have an amazing career as one of the best young point guards in the NBA. Prime John Wall, I think we forget now, but prime John Wall was an amazing player. Right before the start of the 2017-2018 season, he signed a 4-year, $170 million contract extension with the Wizards. And that season, this is when the downfall and injuries started to happen. On January 30th, 2018, Wall will be sidelined for the next 2 months of play with his troublesome left knee, which you have to go back to the 2013 season where he also had more knee problems, which was his third season in the NBA. The year before he became an All-Star, he only played in 49 games that season due to his knee injury. And then 2017-18, it comes back up again. He misses 2 months, only plays in 41 games that season. Wizards still make it to the playoffs. He still made the All-Star team, averaging 19 and 6 with a steal and a block per game, and they eventually lost in the first round to the Toronto Raptors in 6 games. Then going into the 2018-2019 season, Wall was playing pretty solid, but then throughout the midpoint of December, he suffered a pretty bad heel injury at the end of December. He'll be ruled out for the rest of the season, only playing in 32 games in 2019. Wall was supposed to be just out for the rest of the season after the heel injury, but then after having the heel surgery, he developed an infection in the incision from that surgery, which will cause him to miss a little more time. And then a few months later, he was in his home and slipped and fell and ruptured his left Achilles and will be out for 12 months, putting a whole another timeline and another injury piling on top of what John Wall was already dealing with, which was just a very sad turn of events, man. Really sad. Wall then missed the entirety of the 2020 season, and that will be his last season with the Wizards. As then on December 2nd, 2020, he was traded to the Houston Rockets for Russell Westbrook, ending his amazing career in Washington, and now having a new journey, going to the Houston Rockets. From 2017 to 2020, his last 3 years at the Wizards, out of a possible 236 games Wall could have played, he played in just 73 of them, which is a little bit less than 31% of those games. So Wall was traded to the Rockets and actually came back for the 2020-2021 season where he played in 40 games in Houston, averaging 20.5 points with almost 7 assists per game and showing some flashes of the old John Wall coming back to form. But you also gotta remember at that time the Rockets were trying to be in a rebuild. They just traded away James Harden, and now they're going through a whole new phase trying to get all of the young guys into play. So then after 2021, the Rockets made a couple draft picks. We're trying to flip John Wall, but just couldn't find anybody to take him because remember, he's still on that 4-year extension he signed with the Wizards right before the injury started. So he did not play the entirety of the 2021-22 season, as him and the Rockets apparently mutually agreed to sit out for the season. John Wall would. That turned out not to be really that true, as John Wall really wanted to play, but the Rockets just really wouldn't let him because they wanted all the young guys to play. And that ultimately ended his Rockets tenure, as after the season, he came to a contract buyout with the Rockets after 2022. And then a few days later, he was signed with the Los Angeles Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George coming off all the injuries. Wall played in 34 games last season, started in 3 and averaged 11 points and 5 assists per game as injuries started to come up again. And at the 2023 trade deadline, he was involved in a 3-team trade where he was traded back to the Houston Rockets and then waived. And that was the end of John Wall's NBA career for now. It's just a very sad story as a young, promising star for the Washington Wizards. And now he's not on an NBA team. And Wall isn't even that old. Wall is still 32 years old. And I feel like he still has some stuff left in the tank. I don't know if he's going to get another chance to play in the league or if a team's going to take a chance on him. But it's just a very sad story. And we go from that to another sad story that's happened, which is DeMarcus Cousins. Cousins was the 5th overall pick in this draft, also out of Kentucky. And he had a lot of stardom looking like in his career. The Kings, for the first few years of his career, he was pretty solid. Pretty solid. And then in 2015, that's when he started to pop off. He only played in 59 games that season. That was his first All-Star period. He averaged 24 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a block per game. And he was amazing. Probably the best center in the league at this point in time. From 2010 to 2016 with the Sacramento Kings, Well, DeMarcus Cousins averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block, shooting 46% from the field, only 29% from three, 72% from the free throw line. In 2016, he maybe had his best season ever, averaging 27, 11, and 3 with a steal and a block. Even though in 2015-16 he made 2 All-Star teams, he did not play that much. Only played in 59 games in 2015 and 65 games in 2016, but not really injury prone at this point. He just had a lot of load on him. The Sacramento Kings were not good at this time. They did not make the playoffs throughout any of these years that Cousins played. And ultimately, in the midway through the 2017 season, the Kings traded Cousins to the New Orleans Pelicans for him and Anthony Davis to team up to form an amazing twin tower duo down in New Orleans. And honestly, 2017 probably was his best season now that I'm looking at it. He averaged a little bit under 28 points and 10 rebounds per game with 4 assists, a steal, and a block while he was with the Kings for 55 games. And in 17 games with the Pelicans, he averaged 24, 12, and 4 with a steal and a block. But then the 2017-18 season, which was coincidentally the same year that John Wall suffered his first big knee injury. DeMarcus Cousins was playing really good. The Pelicans were looking really good. But then on a game on January 26th against the Houston Rockets in the final seconds of the game, he suffered a torn left Achilles and will be out for the rest of the season. A very tough injury for Cousins. And after that, he was left without a contract. That was his contract year. The Pelicans and him didn't really come to an agreement, and he goes into NBA free agency coming off a torn ACL. And in 2019 free agency, he signed with the Golden State Warriors and broke the NBA, where, he already had Curry, Clay, Durant, and Draymond Green. And now adding DeMarcus Cousins, who we last saw was one of the best centers in the NBA, signing with the Golden State Warriors, really just made everybody mad, especially me. And yeah, it really broke the NBA. Everyone thought that they were not going to lose. Now, Cousins did not play a lot of this season. Cousins only played in 30 games with the Warriors as he was still coming off his Achilles injury. He made his debut in January. But then we go to the NBA playoffs, and he suffered a torn left quad in Game 2 of the first round against the Clippers and would not come back to the NBA Finals, where they eventually lost that series. Cousins played in just 78 games in the past 2 years. But coming into 2020, he signed a 1-year deal with the LA Lakers, where AD just got traded to. Him and AD were going to form a new dynamic duo with LeBron James in LA with the Lakers, and everyone was so excited. But then, in an offseason pickup game in August, right before the season started, he suffered a torn left ACL. It would not be able to play the 2019-20 season with the Lakers, as he eventually got waived halfway through the year. But they did win the championship, so DeMarcus Cousins did get a ring. So a little look back. The last 3 seasons for Cousins, he suffered a torn Achilles, torn quad, and a torn ACL. All that in just 3 years, really. Just very, very sad to see for one of the top young bigs in the league. And then from then on, he's bounced around the NBA. 2021, he played 25 games with the Rockets before being bought out, and then playing 16 games for the LA Clippers. And in 2022, he played 17 games with the Milwaukee Bucks, and then 31 games with the Denver Nuggets. And that was his last chance in the NBA for now. But then, a few months ago in April 2023, he signed with a Puerto Rico national team to play overseas in the Baloncesto Superior National League. And he averaged 20 points, 11 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. He looked like he's pretty much in shape and ready to make a comeback, man. And I'm very excited to see if he can make a comeback. I still think DeMarcus Cousins can play at a pretty high level. He's still only 32 years old and still has some game left in the NBA. Just very sad stories for Wall and Cousins that are both on very similar career trajectories. It's just very funny to see that, because they're both with the college together, drafting the same draft, drafted top 5, and their careers just kind of gone similar ways. Now they're both out of a job, which is very crazy, because those two back about 5 years ago were at the top of their positions, and now they're not in the NBA anymore. It's just very sad to see. But you're looking at the rest of this draft, there's some very solid players that maybe could still play. I'm not sure, but they also got kind of kicked out of the league randomly. The guy that's played the second most games in this draft class is Derek Favors, who played in 709 games, averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds per game for his career. That's most notably known for his tenure with the Utah Jazz. He's a very solid big man on those playoff teams. His last appearance was in 2022. He played 39 games with the young Oklahoma City Thunder. And yeah, hasn't been back in the league since. He's a very solid big that can rebound and score inside. And he's going to be a veteran if he does get signed. I'm not sure if he will get signed. But he has some pretty solid years with the Utah Jazz. The guy that's played the fourth most games in this draft class is Eric Bledsoe, who's the 18th pick, also out of Kentucky. And Bledsoe actually had a pretty solid career, starting with the Clippers and going to the Phoenix Suns, where in 4 years with the Suns, he averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and 1.5 steals per game, averaging 20-point per game seasons. But right now, he's probably most notable for his Milwaukee Bucks tenure, where he just did not really perform well in 2 playoff runs with a Bucks team that had very high expectations. His last stint in the NBA was in 2022. He played 54 games with the LA Clippers before being traded to the Portland Trail Blazers halfway through the season, not playing a game for them. And Eric Bledsoe is now also playing overseas, as he was most recently last season playing for the Shanghai Sharks and the Chinese Basketball Association. Yes, Eric Bledsoe actually plays for the Shanghai Sharks. Ed Davis has played the 5th most games in this NBA draft. He was the number 13th pick out of North Carolina. He has some pretty solid seasons, been around the NBA. He's played for 9 different teams, most notably probably playing with the Portland Trail Blazers. His last stop was in 2022. He played 31 games as a backup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And yeah, he was a very good rebounder. A guy that can go in and get your rebound. Averaged 6 rebounds per game for his career. Averaged 2 offensive rebounds per game for his career, which is pretty good as well. 3 other players that played over 700 games in this draft class. Those 3 are Patrick Patterson, who also played at Kentucky. He was the 14th pick from the Houston Rockets, most notably probably known for the Toronto Raptors. His last appearance was in 2021, where he played 38 games for the LA Clippers. And yeah, he just kind of fell out of the league. I don't know what happened. But he was a very solid stretch 4. Alfred Camino also played in 711 games. He was the 8th pick in this draft by the LA Clippers. Most notably probably known for this Portland Trail Blazer time as well. His last appearance was in 2021, where he played 6 games for the Chicago Bulls after the Orlando Magic signed him to a pretty big contract. But he was your typical 2-way 3-and-D, well, maybe not most 3, but solid defender. And then the other guy was Evan Turner, who was the 2nd overall pick in this draft out of Ohio State. Most notably known for probably his Philadelphia 76er time, but he also played for a few other teams. His last stop was in 2020, where he played 19 games for the Atlanta Hawks, and is currently probably retired and is now on a podcast. So good for him. And then besides John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, there are 3 other players that have played over 600 games in this class. One of them being Avery Bradley, playing 660 games. He's the 19th pick in this class out of Texas. Most known for his Boston Celtics run. He was a very solid 2-way guard. His last appearance was the 2022 Lakers, where he played 62 games and averaged 6 points per game. But he's most notably known for his Boston Celtics time, where he was a 2-time all-defensive team member. And he's still only 32 years old. I'm very surprised that Avery Bradley hasn't got another shot in the league after that season with the Lakers. Another player that's played over 600 games is Greg Monroe. He's played in 646 games. He was the 7th pick in this class out of Georgetown by the Detroit Pistons. He was most known for that time with Detroit, where he actually had a pretty good career. In 5 years, he averaged 14, 9, and 2, with also playing for a few other teams like the Bucks. And he's been around the league recently. His last stop was in 2022, where he played for 4 different teams. He played 4 games for the Timberwolves, 2 games with the Wizards, 5 games for the Bucks, and 3 games for the Utah Jazz. That was 2022, where COVID stuff was happening, so he had the replacement players. That was his last appearance in the NBA. He was a very solid big man that can rebound and score the ball inside, and actually had a little bit of promise early in his career, but things just didn't work out. The NBA kind of changed on him. Then the other player that's played 600 games is Wesley Johnson, who's played in 609 games. He was the 4th pick in this draft by the Minnesota Timberwolves out of Syracuse. Very good college career. And didn't really play as long in the NBA as a lot of other guys, even though he played in 600 games. His last appearance was back in 2019, where he played 12 games for the Washington Wizards, but he's most notably known for his LA Clipper moments, and probably most notably known for getting destroyed by James Harden on a crossover. Then there are 3 more players that played 500 games in the league. 554 games. Lance Stevenson, who was the 40th pick in this draft out of Cincinnati, most notably known for being an Indiana Pacer legend, We had a very good year in 2014. His last appearance was back in 2022 with the Pacers, where he played in 40 games, averaging 9 points per game. Brought a lot of energy, was born ready, and one of Brooklyn, New York's finest. At 532 games, we have Trevor Booker, who was drafted 23rd in this draft out of Clemson by the Minnesota Timberwolves. He averaged 7 points and 5 rebounds per game for his career. He's mostly known for hitting a granny shot with .1 seconds left in the shot clock. His last appearance was back in 2018 when he played in 17 games for the Indiana Pacers. Wow, I did not realize that Trevor Booker hasn't played in the league in a very long time. And then Hassan Whiteside, who's played in 511 games. He was the 33rd pick in this draft by the Sacramento Kings. It took him a little while to get going, but his days with the Miami Heat were legendary, especially 2017, where he averaged 17, 14, and 2. He had a year in 2016 where he averaged almost 4 blocks per game as well. His last appearance was in 2022, where he played 65 games for the Utah Jazz. And he's now also playing in Puerto Rico. Him and Brandon Knight are actually teammates over there. But yeah, Hassan Whiteside, one of the best shot blockers in the league, and really just cared about his 2K rating. Then there are 3 other players that played 400 games. That was the Miami Elitza, who was a player on the Golden State Warriors championship team in 2022. Kevin Serafin and Grievous Vasquez. A few other players that played in 300 games. That was Ekpe Udo, who was actually the 6th overall pick in this draft. Didn't really do much in his career. Luke Babbitt, Quincy Pondexter, and Cole Aldridge. A few other players that played 200 games. That was Jordan Crawford, Landry Fields, who is now the GM of the Atlanta Hawks. Jeremy Evans, who won an NBA dunk contest. James Anderson, and Larry Sanders, who was an amazing shot blocker. And then 2 other players that played 100 games. That was Xavier Henry, who's the 12th pick in this draft, most likely known of playing with the bad Laker days. And then Elliot Williams. And then after that, there's a few other players that played in this class. And yeah, so looking back at 2010, was it a good class? We had 4 All-Stars. We had Wall, Cousins, George, and Gordon Hayward. 4 All-Stars, all NBA team members at one point in their career. A bunch of other pretty solid role players as well. Isn't the best class, absolutely not by a long shot, but it's definitely not a bad class. And looking back on it, having only 2 players left from this class, looking back at it now is pretty insane, because I feel like there's a lot more players, at least probably 4 guys that could still give you some pretty good NBA minutes now, but injuries and just sad stories, honestly, is what this class is. Just a lot of sad stories that unfortunately come to an end that we didn't want to see come to an end like in this fashion and this soon. But hopefully some of these guys can make it back into the league, and maybe we can get some more than 2 players left from 2010. That's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you enjoyed the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn on notifications, also like that. I really appreciate it. It helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.